On this edition of Independent Sources, Migrant Kitchens, highlighting immigrants' impact on Queens' food sector. And Ladies Only, a new Brooklyn salon hopes to create a safe space especially for women who wear the hijab.
Independent Sources, your window to the city's ethnic and immigrant communities. Here's your host, Gary Pierre.
The Queens Migrant Kitchen series is a multimedia project that tells the stories of cooks whose culinary expertise is legendary in their community. This particular series is the first part of a project that will highlight the genius of some of these urban family-run restaurants from around the world. Filmmaker Sarah Khan joins me in studio today to talk about why she wanted to produce this series focused on Queens. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, Gary.
Before we start, let's take a look at this trailer from the series.
Immigrants define Queens today, and for the next year, Culinary Backstreets and I, Sarah Khan, will explore migrant kitchens from the world's most diverse community, Queens, New York. For folks who've never been to Queens, the best way to begin an exploration is on foot, and that means hopping first on the number 7 train. The last stop on the 7 is Flushing, and when you step off into the neighborhood, it feels like a bustling downtown Shanghai. There's little English and plenty of street food vendors. South Ozone Park is a hike, but worth every ounce of goat curry you can consume in one sitting. People from Guyana, Trinidad, Tobago, and India dominate the landscape. Forest Hills has a sizable Asian presence. Parts have an old European world feel, but it's also home to a great number of Jewish Russians and Uzbeks. The neighborhoods of Elmhurst, Corona, and Jackson Heights are next to each other. Asians and Latinos are represented mostly in this region. On one side of Roosevelt Avenue, you can find everything you need for a Sichuan meal. On the other side are spices and produce required for your Kerala stew. And if you don't want to create it yourself, a Oaxacan feast from a street vendor awaits. To finish it all off, you can get a perfect cake made by Dominican or Argentinian hands.
So Sarah, why restaurants in Queens? What made you fascinated with this actual theme and topic?
I've traveled a lot for my work throughout my career, and when I'm in New York, I wanted to still get a sense of traveling, and I also wanted to celebrate the diversity and richness of the world that is in New York. And Queens is one of the most diverse places in the world. It's approximately anywhere from 130 to 140 languages are spoken there. And so if I want to travel far, but still stay in the 5 boroughs, I thought Queens was a very good place to explore. And I think Queens is, it's underrepresented. Everyone goes to Brooklyn, everyone stays in Manhattan, and those are wonderful boroughs too. But Queens is a very special place. And so I thought it was time to kind of take a look at that area and see what migrants have to offer in the larger perspective of the food world.
Mm-hmm. And so what was the criteria? How did you choose your subject, food profile? Because 140 different nationalities, well represented, right. I may add.
Right, 140 languages.
Languages, yes.
And probably that many, certainly ethnicities and languages and many cultures. Why? When I was younger, I would have thought that there had to be a plan and a strict plan, and I had to map out everything I needed to do. As I've gotten older, I've realized it's better to walk around, engage with the community, and see who responds and engages with you. And a lot of that involved a lot of street vendors. Okay. So that was a really good starting point, to begin with street vendors because they're so accessible, they're so available,
But they're also busy at the same time.
Yeah, they're busy, but they're up times and down times. There's a wonderful organization called the Street Vendor Project in New York, so I started going to their meetings on a regular basis. They had a group that was a group of Latino street vendors that were meeting in Corona, so I started going to those meetings. So it's doing that, your due diligence and the art of hanging out and paying attention. And then walking through doors that are open of who would like to be interviewed, who would like their story told, who makes themselves accessible and available. And
well, let's talk about one specific business that you featured in the series. It's called Rokat Kosher Bakery.
Yes.
And it's run by 2 immigrants from Uzbekistan. And let's talk about their cooking techniques and how they get the bread the way they do.
Right. Well, what was wonderful about meeting the gentlemen, the 2 brothers who run Rokat Kosher Bakery, is it was kind of like being in Old Delhi or Central Asia. Walking into their place, I felt like I was back in a home, whether in South Asia. And it was warm and it smelled good because it's baking breads, all different kinds of breads. So that process that you see in the short film is a whole process of getting the flours, preparing the flours, adding the yeast so it can rise overnight, coming in and cutting it up, and then Raphael overseeing the making of samsas, which are a type of samosa stuffed with meats, and then the breads too. And what I so enjoyed about that is that the making of food is multisensory, and it's a physical process. It's an embodied process, and I think the film, it was nice to be able to show that movement of how, for example, you get the braids in the bread. It was very beautifully, they depicted it so beautifully in their motions and in their actions. We were privileged to be able to capture it. So yeah, going there was kind of like going home. They call it a tandoor in South Asia and Northern India and Pakistan. We call it a tandoor. So there are many similarities.
Okay. Also, it's not all about immigrants. In the series, you have one called Negro Motorist Green Book. What is that about?
Right. So when I began this series, it was important for me to pay homage and respect to those people who came before me. So some of the first articles were about the Native American presence and the history. And then the second thing I wanted to focus on was, again, most recently, the New York Public Library made available these travel guides called the Negro Motorist Travel Guides that were started, I think, in 1936, if I have the correct date. I'd have to look back at my notes. But they ran for about 30 or 40 years. There's a wonderful woman doing some great research on it called Candace E. Taylor. But these are guides that, in the Jim Crow era, many African Americans used to know what places were safe that they could go when the sun went down.
Okay.
And Queens has that history too.
Sure.
It wasn't called Queens.
It was a collection of small villages.
Yeah, it was a collection of places that actually, and it was probably called Kings County at the time. But so I tracked back and went back to some of those places that were listed in the Negro Motorist Travel Guides because the public library had made those available online. And so we use a lot of the imagery from those guides in the short film. And again, who was in Queens before us? Native American people. Who came later? Many African Americans during the Great Migration. And then this wave, because of the 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act, that allowed many other nationalities to also come in addition to Northern European migration to the country.
Sure. So we are living right now in turbulent times, speaking of the 60s. Do you think this series are more significant now than they've ever been?
I think it's been significant before these present times, and yes, perhaps even more important to do the work. The whole purpose is to make visible the invisible, to bear witness, and to show the faces of an array of people that work hard. And come with skills, come with knowledge systems, come with abilities to try and make it in a country that is not their own, with limited language abilities or access to institutions. And so, yes, I think this work is very important now, more so than ever. However much I have great respect for chefs and restaurateurs, I also really try to focus it on people at the margins. Street vendors are at the margins. People trying to start up their own restaurants that aren't as mainstream. So really try to focus on forever looking at people on the edges. And to provide a space for them to tell their stories.
Sure. So this is a multimedia project, and one of the skills that you use is visualization. You have the interactive maps. Can you tell us more about that aspect of the series?
I actually did my PhD at City University through City University Lehman College in the New York Botanical Garden. And one of my fellow graduate students who I went to school with is now a very excellent maker of maps. She takes big data and helps you narrow it down and then helps you create maps. So I worked with her and then another partner of hers, an excellent map maker. I worked with him specifically. And what we would do is we would take a lot of the most recent census data and break it down and look at it, look at Queens through the lens of the 53 neighborhoods. And we focused on those neighborhoods, the 6 neighborhoods that are the most diverse. And then within those, we looked at what are the languages spoken. But even before we looked, then after we looked at what are the languages spoken, you know, Spanish speaking, okay? In Latin America, Spanish might be the dominant language, but you don't know if they're Spanish speaking, if they're from Colombia or Ecuador or Mexico. So then we looked at the maps from country of origin so that we could reveal the layers of diversity.
Sure.
And I think the work is really about revealing the diversity of a person, of a community, of a neighborhood, of a culture, over and over again, that none of us are monolithic, none of us are black or white, we are many layered. And so this is one opportunity to reveal that via maps, for example, or via different cooking traditions.
Sure. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. Sarah Khan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You can learn more about the Queens Migrant Kitchen series at Sarah's website, sarahkkhan.com. When we come back, all you need to know about Puerto Rico. On the shelf this week is a book by Dr. Jorge Duany titled Puerto Rico, What Everyone Needs to Know. The tome is a primer on Puerto Rican history, beginning with the original inhabitants and ending with the country as a colony of the United States. The book's author, Dr. Jorge Duany, joins me via Skype. Welcome, Dr. Duany.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
The first question, I guess, the obvious question is, why a history book about Puerto Rico now?
Well, early last year, I was invited to write this book as part of a series that's called What Everyone Needs to Know. And there was no book on Puerto Rico. Many other countries had been covered, from China to Cuba and Venezuela. And I guess Puerto Rico has been in the news lately, unfortunately, many times under a negative coverage because of the financial crisis and the economic recession over the last 10 years. So I took the opportunity to write an introduction to Puerto Rican history, culture, politics, and the economy, both on the island and in the diaspora. And I think that's a result of my work over more than 30 years, not of writing this particular book, but of course I was able to synthesize a lot of the work that I had done before.
And what sets this book apart?
Well, as I mentioned just now, one of the efforts that I tried to pursue in this book was to integrate the experience of the diaspora. There are 2 chapters out of the 6 chapters that deal with Puerto Ricans in the United States, from the early origins of this community in New York City to the more recent migration to Florida. So that's one of the characteristics. The other one, I think, is that it attempts to do a concise and well-documented survey of the academic literature, but it's not for academic. It's for a general audience that seeks to know a little more about this very interesting but often misunderstood country. You
know, Dr. Duany, you wrote in the book about how U.S. has been basically colonizing Puerto Rico for over 100 years, and yet culturally and otherwise, Puerto Ricans have resisted this colonization. Can you give us some examples of how they've done that and why?
Sure. Puerto Rico, technically speaking, has been a colony for all of its modern history since Spain colonized it in 1493 until 1898, when the United States acquired Puerto Rico after the Spanish-Cuban American War. And although there's some disagreement on the island and elsewhere as to the current status of Puerto Rico, I think most experts would agree that Puerto Rico still is a semi-colony or a neo-colony of the United States because it doesn't have sovereignty over its own decisions. However, Puerto Ricans have resisted U.S. colonization for more than 100 years, and perhaps the strongest example that I can give is a question of language. Spanish is still the lingua franca of most Puerto Ricans on the island, and to a certain extent also Puerto Ricans living here in the 50 United States. But language has been a symbolic battleground to assert specifically Puerto Rican identity through the defense of the Spanish language and also the Hispanic background that Puerto Rico had for more than 400 years.
You mentioned that Puerto Rico is very unique compared to the other islands in the Caribbean. How so?
Most territories in the Caribbean became independent after World War II. In fact, until the war, there were only 3 independent countries: Haiti, Cuba, and the Dominican Republic. But quickly in the 1940s and 50s, and especially in the 60s, many countries of the English-speaking Caribbean became independent. Puerto Rico did not. Puerto Rico developed a Commonwealth status, which is very difficult to explain even to insiders in Puerto Rico. But basically what it means is that Puerto Rico retains autonomy over local matters like taxation, education, language, culture. But the federal government of the United States represents Puerto Rico in international affairs. It controls immigration, citizenship, and external trade.
So how is the current crisis playing out in Puerto Rico right now and in terms of its future?
The economic recession in Puerto Rico began roughly 10 years ago in 2006, when the U.S. Congress decided to eliminate the very important tax exemption clause, Section 936 of the Internal Revenue Code, which really dealt a death blow to the industrial economy. Ever since then, Puerto Rico has stopped growing. Many people have left the island. And so that has created not only an economic crisis of tremendous proportions, the greatest economic crisis in the Depression of the 1930s, but also a mass migration that has, by most accounts, overcome the Great Migration of the 1940s and 50s. And this, of course, then has had political implications. And so at this point, for instance, the recently elected governor has proposed a new plebiscite to finally decide between incorporating as a 51st state of the Union or becoming independent. The problem is that there's a very large number of voters who would prefer to have some kind of autonomy, perhaps more self-government, more free association, but nobody really knows exactly what that would look like. So my interpretation of the current situation with the political status is that it really has reached a virtual stalemate, mostly between the pro-Commonwealth supporters and the statehood supporters, because the pro-independence movement really is a very small minority with something like 4% of the voters.
So now in the book you write about how Puerto Ricans reflects a certain transnational identity. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Transnational is a word that has become popular within academic circles to describe the ongoing social, economic, political, and cultural ties between a people and their homeland. In this case, the homeland is the island. And so because many Puerto Ricans have been moving back and forth between the United States and the island for decades, and continue to do so, I think this particular circulation of people, this commuter nation, so to speak, as some have called it, is a perfect example of transnationalism, which means basically in the Puerto Rican case that even those who migrated many years ago and their descendants continue to define themselves mostly as Puerto Rican, not as Puerto Rican Americans, and certainly not as Americans in the full sense of the word, although in fact, legally speaking, all Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens. So that creates this particular conundrum between being Puerto Rican in a cultural sense and being American in a legal sense. But in general, I think the Puerto Rican diaspora shows that this transnational identity is very strong and can continue for several generations.
Staying on the same topic, how is that migration impacting both the island and stateside?
Well, in many places where Puerto Ricans have concentrated, beginning with New York City and more recently with Orlando in Central Florida, Puerto Ricans have left their mark, both in terms of the language that's spoken in private and in public, the food, the music, the religious institutions, and in many other aspects of popular culture. Back on the island, when many of these migrants return, they also take with them their experiences, the influence of the English language, and in many cases, they also influence popular culture back home. One example that's quite curious is, for instance, in sports. Many of the current basketball players and baseball players on the island are actually returned migrants. And at one point in the 1970s, for instance, most of the national basketball team in Puerto Rico was actually composed of so-called New Yorkers, meaning second-generation Puerto Ricans raised in New York City. So this movement of people is quite important in terms of trying to understand the movement of culture, of identities, and of beliefs and practices between the two places of settlement.
I suppose that's what makes Puerto Rican unique in many ways.
They are unique, and in many ways they are similar to other Caribbean peoples who have the largest proportion of migrants probably in the world, so that Dominicans are also joining this huge migrant stream between their homeland and the United States. People in the French Caribbean and the Dutch Caribbean have been migrating around the region as well as to Europe and the United States as well. So they're not unique in the sense that they're not the only ones that are doing it, but perhaps the size and the volume of this movement. Certainly Puerto Rico has a much larger proportion of migrants. More than half of its population now is located in the United States than other countries of the Caribbean.
Dr. Jorge Duany, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
The book, Puerto Rico, What Everyone Needs to Know, is available online at Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble. Stay tuned. When we come back, offering styling and safety to women who wear the hijab. Finally, from us, Le Jamalik is a women-only salon and boutique that recently opened in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, to accommodate Muslim women who wear hijabs. Le Jamalik, which means for your beauty in Arabic, was founded by Huda Kushi. She wants to provide Muslim women with a sanctuary catering to their modesty and need for privacy. The salon will also service women who wish to subscribe to a private and personable full-service salon experience. Crystal Lowe filed this report.
10, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The salon came about from my childhood. Ever since I was a kid, it's always been my dream to have a salon. I literally sketched this salon out when I was 17. Started doing henna on my mom and my family when I was 10. By 14, I was doing everybody's hair and makeup. So it's always been my dream, and it's always been my goal to create something for women. Just have a sanctuary, somewhere where they can be comfortable and just be themselves and not worry. Especially Muslim women that cover, it's really hard for us when we go to salons. There's many salons that accommodate for a hijabi woman, a woman who covers, but it's always in a back room. So it's you get the services that you're able to get in this back room. You're not walking into somewhere where you can get your nails, get your hair cut, get your hair colored, get your facial, your skin, everything in one place. And in this sanctuary, in this safe haven, no man is going to walk in and see you. And then we have our pre-loved gowns. And that's the boutique. And what it is many women purchase their wedding dresses. You know, they get designer dresses for over $6,000 or more sometimes. And it just sits in the closet. You know, some people preserve it. But this is a chance for them to be able to resell those dresses. They're in good condition, so they get to sell it for maybe half the price or whatever value they see for that dress. I will help them to resell them. Our thing is also to empower women, supporting other women, having them show their talents in a place where they can call each other sisters, like have a sisterhood. It's definitely more about women empowerment. And not only for Muslim women, not only women who cover, but in general, women, want a place where they can feel safe and comfortable to get their hair colored and cut and not have, a man walk in and see them in that situation. I wanted a girl to walk in here and feel like she walked into her wedding hall. Because everybody comes in there like, oh my God, everything is white. We are offering a variety of services. Other than hair coloring, cutting, we're very big on makeup. We have a lot of events, a lot of weddings, so makeup is a huge part of this salon. On Mondays, we're gonna have seminars, and we're gonna invite instructors to teach hair, to teach makeup, beginners, advanced. Everybody has a passion, everybody wants to learn, and I have a passion to teach. I wanna be able to give that back to the community. It's been a long journey. When you hear blood, sweat, and tears, it's literally what went into this place. I never knew the true meaning of that until I started this. You think, I want to make a salon, and you just think it's just easy peasy, just go into it and it's not like that. I learned a lot from this experience. I wanted to build the most luxurious place. I wanted to put my all into this. So I didn't take shortcuts. I went through a few contractors actually to finalize everything that I have here. Designing it, from picking out the pieces, the furniture pieces, it took me about 1.5 years to create what you see.
That's our show this week. Thanks for staying tuned. Till next time, be independent-minded.